night, the truck driver charged in a deadly video.
General Motors knew there was a defect linked to deaths. They knew for years and did nothing. The problem started with a small ignition switch, cheap and easy to fix. But when it failed, the engine would shut off while driving. Power steering would disappear, braking became harder, and airbags sometimes didn't deploy. All within seconds, drivers suddenly had no control. Not a catastrophic engine failure, not an exploding fuel tank. Not some impossible engineering challenge. A small ignition switch. Cheap, simple, easy to replace. And that's exactly what made it dangerous. Because small problems inside large corporations rarely create urgency. They create meetings. The switch could slip while driving. A bump in the road. A heavy keychain. A sudden movement. And once it moved, the system changed instantly. The engine shut off. Power steering disappeared. Braking became harder. Dashboard systems failed. And most critically, the airbags often stopped functioning. That's the mechanism. One small component triggering multiple failures at the same time. Not isolated, connected. And connected failures are far more dangerous than individual defects, because drivers lose multiple layers of protection simultaneously. The engine dies, the car becomes harder to control, and during impact, the airbags may never deploy. No warning, no dramatic explosion, just silence. That's what made the defect so deceptive. The car still looked normal. The failure was almost invisible until the moment it wasn't. And inside GM, this wasn't unknown. Engineers identified the issue years earlier. Internal reports existed. Complaints accumulated. Crash data emerged. Patterns repeated. Different states, different drivers, same failure sequence. The company understood the mechanism, and more importantly, they understood the solution. The redesign cost less than $1 per vehicle, not hundreds, not thousands, less than $1. No breakthrough technology required, no complete redesign, no revolutionary engineering challenge, just a slightly stronger ignition switch, a minor modification, and that creates the central question of the entire story. How does a company delay a fix that simple for years? The answer is scale. Because inside large corporations, small fixes become large consequences. Once you acknowledge a defect, you acknowledge liability, and liability expands across millions of vehicles, across dealerships, across insurance claims, across regulators, across shareholders. That's where the system changes. The question stops being, how do we fix this? And becomes, here's what happens if we admit this exists? That's the transition. Engineering problem becomes legal problem. Legal problem becomes financial problem. Financial problem becomes reputational problem. And once that happens, speed disappears. Because every decision becomes connected to risk management. Meetings, committees, reviews, documentation, analysis. The system slows itself down, not because no one understands the danger, but because everyone understands the consequences. And during all of this, the cars stayed on the road. Drivers continued buying them. Families continued trusting them. Complaints continued arriving. Then crashes, then injuries, then deaths. And still, no recall. That's what makes corporate delay so dangerous. It rarely looks dramatic from the inside. There's no single moment where someone says, let people die. Instead, risk gets distributed. One department reviews data, another reviews costs, another reviews legal exposure, another reviews technical feasibility, and the system absorbs the problem piece by piece. until no individual decision feels catastrophic, even though the combined result is. That's why institutional failures are so difficult to stop. Responsibility becomes fragmented. Everyone participates. No one feels fully responsible. Meanwhile, the pattern keeps growing. Same ignition failure, same loss of power, same airbag issue, same outcome. And eventually, external pressure arrives. Investigators started connecting cases together. Journalists began looking deeper. Regulators examined internal records. Now the pattern wasn't internal anymore, it became public. And once patterns become public, control disappears. That's the moment corporations fear most. Not the defect itself, visibility. Because once the public understands the pattern, the narrative changes instantly. Now this isn't a collection of accidents, it's a system failure. Now this isn't bad luck, it's delayed action. And now every internal document becomes dangerous. Emails, engineering reports, meeting notes, timelines, all of it starts telling a story, not of ignorance, but of awareness. That's when GM finally moved. Recalls expanded. Millions of vehicles were affected. Executives testified publicly. Victims' families demanded answers. The company created compensation funds. But by then, the damage already existed. And that's the part people often misunderstand. Recalls solve technical problem. They don't erase institutional behavior. Because the real story here was never just the ignition switch, it was the system surrounding it. A system designed to contain risk, delay disruption, and protect stability for as long as possible. That system works extremely well financially, until it collides with reality, and reality eventually wins. The irony is that the actual engineering solution was trivial. The expensive part wasn't fixing the switch. The expensive part was admitting the switch existed. That's why this case became one of the defining corporate scandals in automotive history. Not because the defect was uniquely complex, but because it revealed how modern corporations behave when small technical problems threaten large financial structures. The danger wasn't mechanical failure alone, it was institutional inertia. Because corporations are optimized for continuity, protecting production, protecting revenue, protecting reputation. And when those priorities conflict with urgency, delay becomes rational inside the system. Even when the outcome becomes catastrophic outside of it, that's the real lesson. GM didn't fail to understand the danger. They understood it, they tracked it, they discussed it, they calculated it, and they delayed acting on it for years.